Hello, everyone, and welcome back to First Gen Gamers. I don't know why I put a pause in there. I'm Jed. That's Mike. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good. Glad to be back in the First Gen Gamers studio, as it were, looking around and seeing it grow. You know, we're recording episodes with more frequency, setting aside the time, as it were. And I think this one's actually going to be out in a timely fashion. That's nice.
Yeah, it's a themed episode, and we're actually going to get it around its target.
Yeah, Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So for those who didn't hear in the last episode, your idea was to talk about not the good relationships in video games, but rather the opposite, the bizarro version, the bad romances.
Yeah.
So, it was interesting. I was able to find something from every generation, but obviously I had a lot more examples to work with from, later generations, because that's when you really start to get narrative heavy.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I think I got some examples. We'll probably have a few of the same, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of them that are fairly obvious standout ones. But I know there's one I'm hoping that you don't have because it's such a curveball. And I when I explain it, I really want to watch the look on your face. It's going to be, if you don't have it, it's going to be the best moment of the day.
All right. Which generation is that?
That'll be the last generation.
Oh, 8th gen. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, why don't you kick things off with 2nd gen? What did you have for that Atari generation as far as bad romances are concerned?
Honestly, this might be the first time, I don't have anything for this gen.
What?
I tried. I really tried. The games then are, I mean, if you want to say the Swedish erotica games, sure, but that's kind of a dark joke. But
yeah, I mean, General Custer, that's definitely a bad romance, right?
Yeah. Romance in heavy air quotes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just couldn't come up with anything. The generation just lacks the narrative depth. Just about every woman that I could find at any rate is a damsel.
Yeah, no, we're gonna be damseling up probably for the next couple of generations, to be honest. Which is, I mean, there's commentary there. I had to get a little meta in order to get a good example. I chose Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man.
Okay, I gotta hear this.
Okay, so Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, they're out here eating pellets. They're running away from ghosts. They fall in love. But unfortunately, it's a long-distance romance because you never see them in the same room together. Miss Pac-Man's only in her game. Pac-Man's only in his. For the longest time, at least.
Right,
So,
and that's if you want to count those 3D adventure games as Pac-Man canon, which...
we don't need to. Plus, we're still in the 2nd generation. So as far as that's concerned, Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, they just don't get to see each other very often, and it's unfortunate.
Damn shame, those crazy yellow pellet gobbling circles.
Somehow still managed to have a kid, though, Pac-Man Jr.
Right.
Yeah. It's wild how that works out.
Which my local arcade, so we have a couple local arcades, but we do have one that has that game. The Baby Pac-Man game. And I hadn't played it in 35, 40 years, and we went to that arcade for the first time last summer. I'm like, oh my God, this game is insane. This is so difficult going from Pac-Man to pinball to Pac-Man to pinball.
Yeah, no, we should probably interview him by now because he's probably about our age. Maybe a little bit older. No, maybe younger, but I mean, I think he would have the inside scoop on his parents' relationship. So,
yep.
If anybody out there has the hookup on Pac-Man Jr., you have his number or his email, let us know. We'll have him on the show to talk about his parents. They thought they could have a kid to save the relationship. I don't know if it worked or not. Time will tell. So that's the 2nd gen. Moving right along.
Yep.
Do you have anything for 3rd?
I do. And it is going to be the relationship that is at the center of Double Dragon. Marion and I know I have to think about it to get it right. Billy and Jimmy, because my brain wants to say Benny and Jimmy.
I was going to say, actually, it's pronounced Bimmy and Jimmy. Thank you.
This relationship is terrible if you play the 2-player game.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know, folks, so Marion is the girlfriend of Billy, or Bimmy, as the case may be. She gets kidnapped. The boss takes her away. Billy and Jimmy have to clean up the streets, beat up everyone on their path to get to her. If you play the 2-player game, after you beat the final boss and you rescue Marion, Marion's way of showing gratitude is to say, well, I appreciate that you fought your way here and probably physically killed yourself, but I kind of want you both, but I'm going to, rather than choose, you two fight it out.
Yeah, if only she had listened to Lonely Island. It's not gay when it's in a 3-way. With a honey in the middle, there's some leeway. Not that it matters nowadays. I say celebrate it. If you want to be with your bro in the bedroom, who's to stop you?
Right.
It was very toxic to sit there and say, fight for my affections. And unfortunately, that's a trope that carries on. But yeah, that's definitely toxic. I agree. I wrote it down myself. So
yeah, it's just, and even for the time, even for the 80s, for the damsel to end up going, yeah, you two fight, you two brothers fight for my affection. Like, what the fuck, lady?
Yeah. No, there's a saying. It's like bros before damsels or something. Yeah. I don't know if it started there, but I could definitely see the sentiment in action. So the whole thing is kind of messed up, especially when it comes to the portrayal of female characters. Now, again, we can judge her, but she is a collection of pixels that was set in motion by male developers. At least I assume the developers of Double Dragon are male. There's a lot of female erasure when it comes to developers in early gen games.
That is true.
Like the best Street Fighter music, all a woman. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, no, the way they wrote her to get attacked, show her panties in the first couple of seconds, and then pit two brothers against each other after they fought, tooth and nail to get to her. Like, that's wild. Come on. I also did the damsel thing with Mario and Peach. I think that's a poor relationship because at some point, either Mario just fails to anticipate that Peach is going to be attacked, or Peach kind of wants to be kidnapped. There's a little bit of nebulous, like we're not really sure how Bowser Jr. came about, but he's convinced that Peach is his mama. I don't know. I don't want to know, because if Peach is his mama, I'm just thinking of the childbirth moment. Yeah.
And that the spinies on the back of Bowser's shell.
Maybe they grew in during pubescence.
I hope so, because if not,
yeah, that would be a rough ride for sure. That's a C-section situation if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there are so many examples of damseling in the second and third gen, Zelda and Link, all that stuff. So I didn't really write out a list, but like anybody could probably come up with a couple off the top of their head. So that's a bad romance. What's funny? I didn't put it in the list, but way later in the 7th generation, you probably recall the indie game Braid came out. Have you played that?
I have not played it, but I've heard of it.
I played it. I was like a big Xbox guy during launch. So, of course, when they had interesting indies come out, I played them. And I played Braid. Braid's a wonderful puzzle game. It really is. It plays with time manipulation and sequencing and stuff like that in a really fun way. But you don't think there's much of a narrative till you get to the end. And basically, he is trying to save the princess. And so the last level is you chasing down the person and the princess that's being kidnapped. They're like on the top screen, you're on the bottom. But then because of the time reversal mechanic, what you actually see play out is that you are playing the bad guy that is obsessed with the princess and she's running away from you.
That's a clever plot twist too. I remember hearing about that and going, that's damn interesting.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a turning the trope on its head. Like maybe the princess doesn't want to be saved and you just think you took it upon yourself. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So interesting stuff. All right. What did you get for 4th gen?
4th gen. So this is a deep cut and it's kind of convoluted. And those are all of the relationships that are part of Phantasy Star 3. again, for those who haven't played it, Phantasy Star 3 does something unique in the series, and it actually kind of makes it the game the black sheep of the franchise. It's, rather than being one long quest, it's 3 mini quests, like 3 15-hour branches. And what happens is at the end of the first branch, your main character of the party chooses between 2 women for whom he's going to marry, and the dynasty is going to continue, the royal family. And from there, it splits off, and you get 2 separate, distinct, the next level of quests. And from there, your main guy of either of those 2 branches has the opportunity to marry one of 2 women, spawning a 3rd generation of branch of different quests. So now you have 1 quest at the top, 2 quests at the middle, and 4 quests at the bottom. The problem is, at no point in time in this game are these relationships ever developed in any meaningful way. Yes, it was the 16-bit era. Yes, storylines and even in RPGs weren't necessarily the deepest. I mean, you had some Final Fantasy 6/3 and Secret of Mana. They could get
It
deep.
sounds like even with the previous game, Phantasy Star 2, Rolf and is it Nee or Nay? How do you pronounce her name?
I've never known.
Right? That's the other tough thing about this generation. There's no voice acting.
Right. I've always said Nee, so.
Yeah, me too. But Rolf and Nee, they had a bit of a relationship, but it was one of those weird Lolita anime relationships, because she's the born yesterday trope, you know what I mean? Where she her age is nebulous and it's like a big brother, big sister thing. But even then they had like a caring relationship. So there was emotional beats when later on, that plays out to its conclusion. I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to ruin what a 30-year-old game for anybody that wants to play it.
Right.
But what's funny? I've never beaten Phantasy Star 3. I beat 1, 2, and 4. I never got around to beating 3. And now I know why it's called Generations of Doom. That's the subtitle, right?
Yep. I actually, not only did I beat it, I got all 4 endings.
Nice.
I was a dedicated 14-year-old in that one. I was like, I'm going to play through this whole fucking thing.
Hell yeah.
But like I said, none of the relationships are developed. There's minimal story beats as far as developing the guy with either of the 2 women in any of the generations. And once you get to that moment, it's literally the king going, or your father or the previous dynast when you're in the next generation going, all right, so you made it this far. Which one you want? Flip a coin. And it treats them like prizes, but they're also a coin flip prize. So one of them is getting married, whether she wants to or not, and one of them is getting cast to the side, whether she wants it or not.
Zero agency and basically objectification all in one. Yeah.
Oh, yep, absolutely.
And we wonder why girls didn't want to play video games back then.
Right.
Oh, man. All right, well, for the 4th, I actually did specifically pick Link and Zelda because I think that this is the point where that became more of a narrative rather than just a reason to go out and quest. Link actually meets Zelda in her castle. She immediately gets damseled. And it starts the series-long running trope of Zelda not really being involved in the story, even though she's very, very interwoven into the plot and very important, and she's a third of the Triforce. And I just think it's a bad romance because Link never really speaks to her and they don't really develop over time, even though it's heavily implied that they could be romantically involved. And I just think that's a poor development of that romance for sure. And it kind of all started with the Super Nintendo Link to the Past, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. And if there's an aspect of the series that really has never, I don't want to say recovered, but they've never really properly addressed it since then, it's that weird, tenuous Link-Zelda relationship. They've never gotten past what they did in Link to the Past.
They got really close with Wind Waker because Tetra, if you recall, was basically Zelda, but she didn't know, or she had her memory wiped or something. I can't remember exactly how that went. But Tetra was like, she had agency, she interacted with Link, they were friends, they worked together, and then as soon as she turned into Zelda, she was damseled immediately. They were like, "Oh wait, you're Zelda? No, sorry, hon, you got to get out of here." So,
all women named Zelda just can't do anything. You can't even lift a teapot. Just sit in a dungeon.
Yeah, no, you can buff the main hero if you want, but that's about it. So, yeah, that would about do it for 4th gen because I didn't have a ton of examples, but from this point forward, I have multiples for sure. Because again, narratives really start to play a bigger role in the generations moving forward. We're coming up on 5th gen, the PlayStation N64 generation. I'm assuming we're going to definitely start to have some crossover too, because there are a few franchises that just continue to come up each generation for me in regards to the examples of bad generations.
Yep.
And considering the types of games both of us like, I know one franchise in particular, I think that we're definitely both going to be mentioning, and that is Metal Gear Solid.
Yep. That was exactly the one.
I knew it. Solid Snake and Meryl. I mean, I think Solid Snake and Otacon, beautiful relationship. Wonderful. That right there, it's positive. Solid Snake doesn't judge Otacon for peeing. He supports him. You know, like, he's like, you pee your pants. Okay, well, maybe you can't fight. Support me from the shadows. It's okay. But with Meryl, you know, he's constantly nagging her. And then, like, even when they get together, he's very standoffish and aloof. And we all see how that relationship plays out. So it's poor, unfortunately. Yeah. There's a power dynamic, too, because Meryl is a really big fan of Solid Snake and kind of sees him as this legend. You know what I mean? And to his credit, Solid Snake does try to disillusion her, but he also flirts like carelessly with every woman that he meets, knowing full well that he is not prepared to do anything with that.
Oh, yeah. He is absolutely just like, yep, you got boobs.
All right. Maybe I'll let you do a strip search I'll do a strip search on you. It doesn't help that a lot of women flirt with him too, but you know how that goes.
Yep.
It's Hideo Kojima. You will be ashamed of your words and deeds. So, let's see what else I have. Leon and Ada. Resident Evil 2. Have you ever played Are you a Resident Evil guy?
I am not.
I didn't think you were, but I wasn't sure. Ada ends up being kind of like a double agent who is more involved with Umbrella and the story of the T-virus and all of that than she initially lets on. And Leon, it's his first day as a cop. He shows up to Raccoon City and all hell breaks loose. But him and Ada do have kind of a bit of an attraction, a magnetism, if you will. There's something there, but it never quite manifests. Leon obviously very much cares for her, but whenever they're interacting, it's always like the end of the world. So they can't catch a break, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. The last example I had was from Final Fantasy, another series I don't think you're into.
I've only finished one of them.
Which one's that?
10.
Oh, okay. When I was doing research, there were people who were saying that Tidus and Yuna were a bad pair. And I'm like, how, Sway? I thought they were great. They loved each other.
Yeah, they were cute.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they had awkward moments like that laughing scene. But honestly, I look back and I find that so charming. Like, it's so stupid. But I think it was intentionally awkward. You know, they were literally teenagers. Leave them alone.
Right. Like... Okay, to completely go off on a side tangent here, it reminds me of all of the backlash towards the romance in Star Wars Episode 2. And how people were like, they have no chemistry, they're really awkward, they really, they don't feel human. Do you remember your teenage romance years? That was awkward as hell. Yeah, okay, so Anakin is 19 years old. This is his first relationship. He's been, his life has been split either as slave boy or cloistered in a priesthood.
Mm.
And Queen Amidala, now senator, has spent all of her life in public service. Yeah, no shit, it's going to be awkward. This is literally their first relationship for either of them.
Yeah. Definitely a relationship that was doomed to fail, but that's all of us speaking from hindsight. Those kids didn't know.
Right.
You know? And plus they were in an area where everything was soft. Not like sand. It's rough, of course. Gets everywhere. Yeah, that's all I had for the 5th generation. What do you have?
Metal Gear Solid is my big one. But I went with a different relationship in there. The Snake and Meryl one is definitely valid. I thought of that one, but the other relationship that really stuck out to me is barely a relationship at all, but there's romance in it and it's toxic, and that's Otacon and Sniper Wolf.
Yeah, 100%. That is definitely a simp style relationship right there.
Yeah. Otacon is absolutely obsessed with her and trying to impress her and trying to win her love. And he is completely ignoring the fact that she is a homicidal terrorist. And
who barely notices him, by the way.
Oh, yeah. If he was on fire on the sidewalk, she wouldn't even notice the flames. She'd just walk right by.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he is just an obedient lapdog until the last possible moment. It is just depressing.
Yeah, and the thing is, he doesn't have the excuse of being a teenager or that even being his first relationship, as we'll find out later on in the canon. So,
yeah,
because he comes up on my list later on for sure. All right, well, 6th gen. What do you have for that 6th gen?
6th gen, I've got a couple. The first one might be, let's do the obvious one first. Let's do Metal Gear Solid 2 because we said it was going to recur.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 2 has a couple different relationships that could be bad.
Oh, yeah.
One is the less obvious Lolita kind of flirtation between Raiden and Otacon's little sister.
Mm-hmm.
Ew. There's a scene in there. I remember playing this. My wife watched me through playing all of this, and there's a scene right. I think it's near the part where you have to swim through that whole horrible section.
Yeah, the flooded cell. Yeah.
And if you haven't played the game, Otacon's little sister, whose name is just escaping me at the moment.
Emma Emmerich.
Emma. Yes, thank you. She is very much designed as a overly cutesy kind of trope. But
yeah, like a little nerdy girl. She's in her 20s though, if I recall, right? She's working there.
She is, but she doesn't act like it is the problem.
No, you're right. She definitely has like big preteen energy.
Yeah, she visually and the way she acts, she's like, you'd think that she was like 15. And there's a part where Raiden says something to her and makes some passing reference to her being just cute. And she goes, "Oh, I'm much more than cute." And she kind of tilts her head and she kind of bats her eyelash. And I remember I was playing it and my wife looks up and my wife was like, "She's a little sex pot, isn't she? That's kind of disturbing." So when the women are watching it and noticing it, okay, I guess that should be red flagged. The other relationship that's bothersome in this game is the obvious one. Rose and Raiden. From the start, they're constantly bickering. This does not seem like a relationship that should still be going because one of them is always sniping at the other. But then, spoiler alert for a, 22-year-old game, Rose turns out to be a double agent, but maybe a triple agent. It's a Kojima game, so the plot.
Yeah, you're never gonna. Yeah.
The plot twists get very Jenga-y. She's working for the Patriots, who are basically blackmailing her into doing their bidding and manipulating Raiden without him knowing it. But she really does kind of grow feelings for him during the manipulation. So it's kind of a 90s teen movie thing where it's my buddies bet me to take the nerdy girl to the prom, but I ended up really falling in love with her kind of thing, except for the genders are flipped.
Yeah. And it's like the Illuminati wants me to totally screw over this guy and control him in the field of battle, but he's hot.
It's just so ew. There's just something so wrong with it. I mean, at least they flipped it on its head and it's not the guy gaslighting the girl, but it's still bad.
No, yeah, it doesn't really matter like who's doing what, but you're right. We don't see that dynamic very often where it's the male being taken advantage of. And that in itself is interesting to play with. And when you actually go through Metal Gear Solid 4 and then eventually Revengeance, you see how that relationship plays out. It's a little sad,
Yeah.
It's like they just a certain amount of PTSD or a certain amount of damage that a person can take when they're being manipulated as a tool of war. Eventually they just can't go back. You know what I mean? They can't live the life they want to live. They can't live as a normal human being.
Yep.
So, and she played a big part in that. So I would agree. That is a bad romance.
Yeah. And the last one that I've got, this is the controversial one because depending on where you fall, you might not even consider it a relationship because there's canonical confusion as to the status of the relationship. That would be Shadow of the Colossus.
Wanda and the what did the girl have a name?
Oh, she did, and I had it written down, and I can't remember what the hell it is. I thought I had it on my phone.
Okay. Yeah, forgive me, because they definitely don't say her name very often. I mean, they don't have a whole lot of dialogue to begin with, other than your next target is...
But the relationship at the center of that, whether it's, even if it's brother, sister, even if it's friends, it's still toxic because this guy has decided this girl just didn't deserve to die. I mean, fine. That's not necessarily bad, but he's decided to go commit murder of 16 ancient beings to balance that out and bring her back to life. Now, yes, he's being manipulated. Again, sorry, spoiler for a 22-year-old game, but that doesn't change the fact that he's okay with committing mass murder just to bring back this one chick.
Yeah. I mean, I'd push back a little. Like, I agree with you that in a certain light, it could be seen as toxic, but also, like you said, he was being manipulated. And I mean, these colossi are like large golem-like beasts that he probably doesn't even see as living beings at first. And I think the gut punch of this game is going through and seeing slowly but surely, you know, how you get little glimpses of the quote unquote humanity of these colossi and that maybe they are peaceful, even though they attack you on sight. Right. But you're seeking them out and you do start to wonder, am I doing the right thing? You know what I mean? Should I sacrifice all of these beings that, for all intents and purposes, don't appear to have humanity? They appear to just be large, hulking, like golem beasts. You know, what do I care? But then you see the corruption happen in Wanda, and you see how like that all plays out. And then you see that the village and the chief that forbade him, which again, this could be an allegory for going against tradition or religion, you know, and not just accepting something on face value because an elder tells you it's the way it is. In this case, they were right, and he should have heeded those warnings. But I think that's what makes it so tragic and sad. And then at the end, when they finally defeat the manifestation, what's the big bad's name that basically takes Wanda's mind over? Do you remember?
I don't.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. When the Colossus are killed, like then that being can take him over, and he's able to be resealed by the villagers and then reborn as a baby. So when the woman comes back alive, she has that baby to take care of, which I think is kind of cool in a sense. You know, it's about loss and death and life and rebirth. So there are bigger themes at play, and because there's little dialogue, it's so up to interpretation about what's going on in Wanda's mind or anybody else's mind, to be honest. So yeah, I think seen in a certain light, it could be toxic, but I also like to believe that Wanda really did have the best of intentions and didn't really understand or see the weight of what they were doing, specifically because they were being manipulated and because of their ignorance.
And that's what I admit makes it controversial, is that it is a game that has a massive amount of left open to interpretation to it.
Yeah.
So it just depends on whether or not you want to see him as the tragic hero or a guy who thinks that the ends justify the means.
Yeah. True. All right. Well, to keep with the theme we were talking about earlier of Metal Gear 2, I also mentioned Otacon and his stepmom because holy shit.
I forgot about that one. Whoa.
That's the worst relationship in that game, sir. I can't believe you glossed that over. So Otacon, Sniper Wolf not being his first bae, Otacon's dad, Huey Emmerich, gets married to Emma's mom. And so Emma is Otacon's stepsister. And she was young. She was really young enough to like need help swimming. And so Otacon started an affair with his stepmother, and they were actually having sex, I think, when Emma almost drowned. So he feels really guilty about that. And that's why she's afraid of water. Also, his dad found out about the affair and killed himself. Now, for those who know who Huey is and they understand his whole plot line later on, you've realized that's not that big of a tragedy. Huey's kind of a piece of shit. But Otacon being young and being manipulated by an older woman and carrying all of that guilt, you know what I mean? With like all of the stuff that kind of played out, the damage to his stepsister, who he genuinely loved, and then like his father like losing his mind. I think that really counts as a terrible romance. And, you know, just because it's the number one search term on Pornhub doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea to get with your stepfamily.
Ew.
I don't know how that became a trope, by the way. That's so wild to me. Let me see. I had a few other for 6th gen. So I wanted to mention Final Fantasy X. You beat that. Waka and Lulu. What?
Yeah, that's...
What?
Yeah, that one never sat right with me.
So for those who don't know, there's the central village where most of the main characters live. Yuna, Waka, Lulu, Kamari. Waka and Lulu were friends because Lulu was actually with Waka's, was it his younger brother? I think, Chapu?
Oh, it's been so long since I played it, I don't remember.
Yeah, anyways, his brother. Doesn't really matter, his brother. So Lulu's with Chapu. Chapu decides to go off to fight Sin, the big bad in the game. And he picks up a Machina weapon to do it, which is what makes Maka so crazy about, you know, using those types of weapons. But he dies. And Lulu is obviously very bitter, and she gives Waka a hard time and kind of negs him the entire game. And you can see little moments of her being impressed with him, but even when she's impressed with him, like when he exhausts himself to play blitzball against, you know, like the Luca tournament, in order to buy them time to rescue Yuna, who was kidnapped by the Albed. She was like, wow, you really gave it your all. But then when he wasn't in the room, she was like, Waka will fail. He's always like that. You know what I mean? She just negs him constantly. And they never really seemed to have a very healthy relationship as friends. So the fact that they ended up being romantically interested and their connection is the fact that she used to date his brother doesn't sit right with me.
I can't argue any of that. It's weird.
Yep. Going to Final Fantasy VII, Dirge of Cerberus, Lucrezia and Professor Hojo. That's a weird pairing. So for those who aren't familiar with the convoluted story that is Final Fantasy VII's backstory and lore from the extended games, Lucrezia is actually Sephiroth's birth mother. And she was working in a lab with Professor Hojo. Professor Hojo is like the worst. Like, I will experiment on anyone. Nothing is out of bounds for me in the name of science type of dude. And he convinces Lucrezia to inject Sephiroth, little baby Sephiroth, with like Genova cells, I guess, to, you know, see what that'll and make him into a super soldier, which eventually drives him crazy. And while she's pregnant with him, she gets visions that this is a bad idea, but doesn't anyways. So the fact that she was with Professor Hojo and the both of them were experimenting on their own children. And then later on, she has a relationship with Vincent Valentine, which is the son of somebody she used to work with, like one of her mentors. And then she ends up splitting with him to go back. It was either she was with Vincent first and she went to Professor Hojo, or she went back to Professor Hojo. I don't know. Anyways, she is framed as a good person, or she has a good heart, but she's constantly making terrible decisions and hurting everybody that she's involved with. So yeah, for those who are familiar with Dirge of Cerberus, or maybe Advent Children, they know that Lucrezia is toxic AF. Resident Evil 4, Leon and Ashley.
Do they end up together?
They don't end up together. However, just like you were saying with like the flirtation with Raiden and Emma, with Leon and Ashley, there's definitely a power dynamic at play, and they make it so Ashley like propositions him. You know what I mean? And just the whole kind of vibe between the two of them was, Plus, he's constantly looking up her skirt when she's going down ladders, and I don't appreciate that, Leon.
Fair.
I'm reaching for that one. Claire Redfield and Steve from Code Veronica. Steve is a really annoying character that she meets. He has a weird Canadian accent. He's like, sorry. And he's flirting with her, and she's like, whatever. And then on, I guess, the middle of the game, when they're traveling like to the second location of the game, like you see like hints that they're, having a budding romance, but she has shown that she is not only does not like him, but she's annoyed by him the entire game. And then eventually, of course, he gets turned into a monster she has to fight. So it's a big thing. And the last one I want to mention was from Silent Hill 2, specifically James Sunderland and Maria, which is the town's manifestation of his dead wife, Mary. Maria is kind of like, yeah, I know. Maria is a toxic representation of his ex-wife. She has the same like facial structure, like polygon structure in her face, and the same voice actress plays her, but her voice sounds a little bit different, a little bit more weary. She's constantly like teasing James and messing with him, and throughout the game, he constantly has to watch her get killed, which if you know the game and like how it ends, you understand what the town is trying to do and what's happening with him. But that whole relationship, and the relationship, honestly, with his ex-wife is toxic because of eventually what he decided to do in regards to his wife on her deathbed. So I won't say much more. I don't want to ruin everything. That is definitely not the relationship you think it is when he first sets out to find her after receiving a letter from her, and she had already been dead for years. So that wraps up for 6th gen. 7th gen, what you got?
7th gen has some. This one has some notable ones that I think need to be mentioned right off the top. Okay. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006.
And Princess Elise. I had that one too.
Oh. Why, Sega, did you think that we would want to see interspecies erotica?
I don't know. Was Princess Elise in 2006? I thought she was in, like, what are the spinoffs? Was it 2006? I could be wrong.
Yeah, it was the reboot.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
No, I remember. Gross.
Whoa. Whoa. Who thought that? Who looked at that? What script supervisor read this and thought, yeah, that's good. Go with that.
I don't know. They were clearly a furry. And you know what? I don't want to kink shame, but at the same time, man, like, it's a kid's game. Let's go easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's go easy on the hedgehog to human relations.
Yeah.
And the mouth to mouth kissing.
Oh.
What if a kid had a pet hedgehog and they're like, should I kiss my hedgehog? No, you shouldn't. No, you shouldn't.
No.
Listen, kids, don't kiss your pets. Don't kiss them on the mouth. Stop that.
That hedgehog will not appreciate it. It does not understand that gesture.
They cannot give consent. You must get consent. Animals cannot give consent. All right.
Another big obvious one that needs to be mentioned is the Bionic Commando reboot.
I mentioned that too, actually. Yeah.
Again, what were people thinking when they read the script and thought, yes, a woman's essence has been transferred into a biomechanical, what's it called? Prosthetic appendage, and then surgically attached to her husband. This is just begging. I mean,
Jed, you don't understand, okay? The arm had to be made from the remains of his dead wife because the connection between him and his arm needed to be physical and emotional, okay?
Yeah, totally.
He's got to have an emotional connection to his prosthetic.
Totally how prosthetics works.
Oh, man, that was wild. I remember that's all anybody would ever talk about in that game is like, that arm is his wife, right?
Right. The quality of the game, which wasn't good anyway, but the quality of the game just got completely overshadowed by the fact of dead wife equals robo arm.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I'm sure that there are some other big hitters in this generation, but the ones, my main pick for this, the ones that stood out to me, any game made by Quantic Dream.
David Cage.
Yeah. Any David Cage game. I am convinced.
He's creepy.
I'm convinced this man has never had a relationship in his life. Or if he has, they've all been terrible.
Oh,
because all of the relationships at the centers of these games are just batshit insane. Which one is it? It's not, it's Beyond Two Souls.
Ryan and Jody.
Yeah, the gaslighting and manipulation in that goes to the point of manipulating someone into committing war crimes.
Yeah, Ryan sucks.
Yeah.
He sucks.
I mean, would you commit genocide for me, honey? That should never be a question. That should never be a thought.
Yeah.
And then the one in Heavy Rain.
Yeah, Ethan and Madison, for sure. That was really awkward and messy and forced. Again, he has to everyone. I mean, people don't know this. There was a cut scene, or I don't think if it was cut, actually. Every woman in his game has to have some sort of shower scene. And I know Madison was naked. I think he actually did model a naked Elliot Page, where basically you could see his body before the transition. And that was not, Elliot did not give consent.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little messed up.
Yep.
And yeah, no, with Ethan, he's a grieving dad. He admits to her he thinks he might be a child murderer. And she was like, okay, let's sleep together. What is even happening?
Right. That, once you see the PTSD of grieving dad, that should definitely
Sex should be off the table.
Yeah. That should be a lady boner killer right there. I think I may have killed my own kid. You should be slowly backing out of the room like Homer slowly backing into the bush.
Well, even if you believe that he needs help, or you're not really 100% sure if he did do it and you care about him, there are different ways to comfort somebody rather than taking sexually advantage of them during a heightened emotional state. Like, he was extremely emotionally vulnerable. And again, the way they frame it is that it's consensual, but that's David Cage not understanding the human psychology. I'm pretty sure he's an alien.
I think the only interactions, the only knowledge that he has of human emotion and relationships he picked up from IKEA instruction manuals.
There you go.
He is just seemingly unfamiliar with how human relations and human emotions work. It's disturbing.
Yeah. Yeah, straight up.
So what do you got?
Let's see. I got 3 others. The first I want to mention is Geralt and Triss from The Witcher 2. So for those who are unfamiliar with The Witcher story, and you don't really know when you're playing The Witcher 2, in fact, they don't really allude much to it in The Witcher 3 other than explaining that Triss knows it was wrong. But Geralt gets amnesia. And he is in love with Yen, and Yen and him are in a relationship. And Triss knows this, and she's friends with both of them. But when he has amnesia, she takes advantage of him and starts a sexual relationship with him, knowing that if he had his memories, he would not want to start a sexual relationship with her. And it sucks. And so for those who know that backstory and have read the books, picking Triss as a romantic option in Witcher 3, not an option. She sucks, which is unfortunate because if you haven't read the books, Yen is framed as very adversarial, and Triss seems very sweet and kind, and so the natural inclination is to have a relationship with Triss. But the reason why Yen is a little bit adversarial is because you fucked her friend. And, Geralt's like, I had amnesia. And I get her, and she's like, I understand, but also, anytime you say something nice about her or mention her, it pisses me off. She goes to Kaer Morhen, where Triss and Geralt have been together, and finds the bed they had sex in and fucking magically just tosses it out a window because she's just so pissed. And I get it. So Triss sucks for that, for taking advantage of him. And the way that the games glossed that over and kind of framed it differently, just so people without the knowledge of the backstory of the books wouldn't really understand. Yen got the short end of the stick. That's all I'm trying to say. Let's see. Star Wars The Force Unleashed. Starkiller and Juno. Remember that relationship?
Honestly, I did not get far enough in that game. I was not impressed with that game.
Yeah, Starkiller is a bit of an angry incel, and Juno is just his pilot, and they somehow form a romantic bond out of nothing. There's no chemistry. There's no moment where they really get to, they just, man and woman like each other. And then that becomes a central driving force of the second game as well, because he like feels guilty about how that all went down and misses her. And it's just like, what, you miss what? Like, there was nothing there. So it's just one of those cases where video games are like, man, woman, put them together. That's relationship. They don't have any kind of build up. They didn't earn it. Not at all.
Right.
So,
they were just in proximity of each other, and somehow that just magically means romance.
there you go. So the ultimate bad relationship that I want to talk about that spans generations, but really kind of comes to a head this generation, is the relationship between Chris Redfield of the Resident Evil series and Albert Wesker. They are obsessed with each other. Now, you'll see them throughout the games. Like in the first game, obviously, Wesker and Chris are on the same kind of elite squad. What are they called? Stars?
Yeah.
Special Tactics and Rescue Squad. And then you find out Wesker's secretly working for Umbrella and betrays Chris. And has a particular heart-on for, like, I don't know if he's jealous of Chris or he just doesn't like Chris, but like he comes after him pretty hardcore. And then he shows up again in Code Veronica and he has powers, and Chris and him are fighting the whole time, but they're just, again, it's very homoerotic. There's like there's an intense tension between the two of them, like they're ex-boyfriends or something. And then you get to the 7th gen and we go to Africa. This is Resident Evil 5. And Chris is literally punching boulders to get to his ex because he's just so upset. And the whole game, they're like, Chris, Wesker. And I just think if they had sat down and worked out each other's differences, that maybe they could have had something there. But they were just very abusive. And this is actually a good moment to point out that same-sex couples actually experience domestic violence on a higher rate than mixed-sex couples. And I think the reason why is because there isn't the whole trope of there being like a sex that's more vulnerable. So like, you know, if a man fights a man or a woman fights a woman, it's less of a story than if a man fights a woman. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so they're angry at each other and they're two dudes and they don't see anything wrong with hurting each other. But at the same time, it's like, if you guys care about each other, you should be able to talk it out. And there shouldn't be violence entering into this. But unfortunately, Chris and Wesker could not emotionally handle that. And it played out in a very sad way. One of them fell in lava. So, folks, if you're out here physically fighting with your significant other and you're in a relationship, you may need to either get out of it or go seek help, because if you don't, you're going to fall in lava. Okay.
And no one wants to fall in lava.
No one wants to fall in lava.
No, that's just, you're going to have to delay a lot of lunch appointments to get over that.
It's not helping anyone when you fall in lava. The floor is lava. All right. We got 8th gen. Do you want to save your big twist for last?
No, I'm fine with going now.
Oh my God. He's so excited. Okay. Go for it.
Okay. So I have to explain the story of the game to get to the bad to you'll see. So It's a game called 12 Minutes.
I've played this game.
Okay, so you do know the twist. Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so
spoilers for 12 Minutes, because it actually is a decent game that you might want to check out. Is this still on Game Pass?
I don't know.
I played it on Game Pass. I remember that, but I was mad. I was mad. But go ahead.
So the game is a murder mystery Groundhog Day kind of game. Mm-hmm. The name 12 Minutes refers to the fact that you're constantly repeating a 12-minute loop. Mm-hmm. The game starts off with, there's a husband and a wife. I can't remember the names. I thought I had them written down. I apologize. So husband and wife, they have kind of a tension-filled relationship, and part of it stems from the fact that the wife's husband or the wife's dad was murdered. Mm. Through the course of the game, through repeating loops, you find out that no, he wasn't just murdered. The wife killed him. Mm. But then you play more loops, and no, the wife didn't kill him. The husband killed him and is covering up for the wife. So we're on several layers of toxicity already because, you know. Yeah,
and you're playing as the husband in the game, it should be pointed out.
Yes, thank you.
And the whole reason you're replaying the 12 minutes and it's frantic is because during the course of that 12 minutes, a cop played by Willem Dafoe comes in and basically executes the two of you, if I recall, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and you have to stop that.
Yeah.
You're like, no.
So already you had a bad relationship before murder.
Yeah.
Then you find out one person murdered it. Then you find out, no, the other person murdered it. Well, wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
Or wait 12 minutes. The biggest twist of all is that this whole thing is actually the husband's. He's going to therapy, and he is using this 12-minute loop as a mental coping mechanism to try and deal with the fact that he is in love with his wife, who, spoilers, is his half-sister.
I hate it!
Fucking incest.
I hate it.
After all of that, after getting through all of that, this awesome time mechanic, because I love time travel movies and I love time loops.
Oh, it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's such a brilliant idea to use that vehicle as a murder mystery, and the way that the plot twists develop. It's clever, and then all of a sudden go, one, it was all a dream, basically, and two, oh yeah, you're banging your half-sister.
Yeah, it's just applying the formula to a Ricky Lake episode. I hate it!
It's so revolting. And it frames it as if he's trying to cope with it. It doesn't necessarily frame it like he's trying to get over it.
No.
Just that he's trying to deal with it, which means that there's a part of him that's like, well, it's only half.
And that's the thing. I want to point something out. It's not inherently bad to have a flawed main character, to play as a flawed main character, or to explore questionable themes. However, you need to pay attention to the way the narrative frames these themes and whether or not they unambiguously support the mindset behind them. And yes. I think that's kind of, because again, a lot of people didn't like There Will Be Blood, just to kind of go on a tangent here. Daniel Day-Lewis, I thought it was amazing, but I understand that, the audience's need to identify with the quote unquote protagonist. But if you don't look at it as somebody you need to identify with, you can see that none of his actions are being celebrated, and you can see how it ends. And you're like, oh my God, it's just watching a bad person's descent into more badness. Right. But there is a way to display or show that movie or frame it in a way that justifies his actions or supports the logic behind it. And There Will Be Blood did not do that. So when you have a narrative like this that, subtly implies justification for some of these themes, that's where you lose me.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely. It's
toxic
in the worst friggin' possible way.
12 minutes of a bad romance, guys. All right. Did you have anything else for Ape Gen?
No, that one was the neutron bomb. Like,
honestly, that's all you need.
Yeah. I once I heard of that one, I went, okay, I'm sure that there are other ones. I'm sure that you'll have some great ones, but that one just, there's no honorable mentions for me to stack up against that.
Okay. I'm going to name a few. I'm going to talk about some more than others. Well, I'll just go through the list here in no particular order. So I mentioned Huey Emmerich earlier, right? Otacon's dad. So Huey Emmerich and Strangelove. For people who are unfamiliar with the Metal Gear series, I think you know where I'm going. Huey Emmerich and Strangelove are actually Otacon's parents, and Strangelove is a bit of an asexual or kind of an off-sexual person, which is, I think, why their name is Strangelove. And she gets into an argument with Huey about using their son Hal as a test pilot for Sahelanthropus because the cockpit can only fit a child. And basically, she secretly sends Huey to America to protect him so that way he cannot be used as the pilot, because it's a very dangerous process, obviously. Huey gets so upset with her about this, he seals her inside the mammal pod, which makes, basically, he lets her suffocate to death. So it's like, you sent our son off to protect him so I couldn't do my experiments? I will murder you in the most horrible way, by the way. I'll basically bury you alive.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, you guys say more. Ellie and so I want to mention The Last of Us Part 2. I'm going to get into spoilers here, and I think this is a really, really good narrative. So again, skip forward like 30 seconds if you want. Ellie and Dina, I think, had a really sweet, good relationship throughout the game, but because Ellie was just so racked by the need for revenge that even when she finally gets everything she ever would have wanted, which is a life with Dina, peaceful and away from all of the horror of everything they've went through, she can't let it go. She gives it all up, knowing that when she gets back, it'll be gone. And it was. And it's really sad. Abby and Owen. Abby is the other playable character in Last of Us, and they are exes. Owen is now with another woman who I think he got pregnant, and they end up still having kind of like this relationship tension, and they even have sex during the course of the game while he's still with the other woman. And it's just, it's really not a great relationship, and it's built on a lot of like, you know, shared trauma and history, and it's just not like the bedrock you want any good relationship to be on. So there's that. I'm just going to say the name of the game, and I'm not going to say anything else because it is a game you really need to play for yourself if you haven't. So I'm just going to mention it. For those who know, you know. Doki Doki Literature Club.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I need to say.
Yep.
Moving on. A Dragon Age Inquisition. So you have a lot of different romance options in Dragon Age Inquisition, and there's a character named Sarah, and she sucks. She is a city elf, I think, that was raised by human parents. I can't recall if she actually was, but she hates elves, like to a genocidal degree. And if your main character is an elf and you romance her, she's got this kind of like, I'm not like the other elves girls vibe, and she's constantly negging you and your culture. And she will literally give you an ultimatum that if you decide to romance her, she'll demand that you give up your religion in order to be with her. Even when it's proven that elf gods actually exist during the course of the game. Doesn't care. And I just think that's like any kind of ultimatum in a relationship that makes you give up the core of who you are, what you believe, that's fucked up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You said it best.
Yeah. So, that covers the bad romances, and we're right at an hour. We'll probably clock in just under this time, but, yeah, that'll do it for me, man.
Yeah.
That was, you know what? I want a little palate cleanser. Can we talk about a good relationship in video games to end it with? I want to be on a positive note.
Sure.
This feels very dark.
Sure.
Do you know of any positive relationships that you, off the top of your head, that you'd want to mention?
Okay, so this is going to be comical a little bit, but I'm going to say any relationship in the Saints Row games. Because whether it's the boss and what's her
Shawnee?
name? Whether it's the boss and Shawnee, whether it's the boss and the
Johnny Gat?
No, not Johnny Gat. Oh, well, fine, Johnny Gat too. The cute hacker girl from part 3.
I thought she was Shawnee.
No, Shawnee was the.
Well, no, she was like a stoner in number 2, but I thought that maybe it's a different girl. You're right. Okay.
Yeah, she becomes like this all business badass in part 3.
Oh, okay.
I can't think of the hacker's name. Why? I've only beaten the game like half a dozen times. All of the relationships, everyone knows the expectations, everyone knows the boundaries, everyone knows what they're getting into with it.
Everybody's a ride or die in that game. I'll give you that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And whether they're friendship relationships, whether they're sexual relationships, it doesn't matter. They have a strong bond with each other, and they know what to expect from each other, and it's strangely positive.
Yeah, there's no family like your chosen family. Yep. I gotta say, you get a good group of friends going together, that'll carry you through. I like that. Let me try to think. I guess I'll just go back to Tidus and Yuna. I thought that was really sweet. So for those who have never played Final Fantasy X, Tidus is kind of like our point of view character because he basically gets sucked to a land that he doesn't understand. It's like 1,000 years in the past, apparently. And throughout the course of the game, you understand like what actually happened and who he is and all that. But he joins this pilgrimage of this young woman who's a summoner who she is destined to fight the big bad that's wrecking all the towns, this giant monster named Sin. And what he doesn't know, and what nobody really tells him until the end of the game when he finds out, is that she is going to die in that battle. Every high summoner before her, including her dad, who was the most previous high summoner, was able to defeat Sin and bring about a temporary reprieve, what they call a calm, usually about 10 years. But then Sin always comes back, so they have to get another summoner, and that summoner will have to sacrifice their lives. When he finds out, he feels terrible because the whole game he keeps telling her, let's hurry up and beat Sim so we could do other stuff. And, they stop to look at a sunset because they know they're looking at it for the last time. But he's like, why are we waiting here? Let's get moving, and he feels lost. He feels homesick. He feels scared and alone. And she's like the only one that stops to consider his feelings and comfort him. And they have that awkward laugh scene together. They have that moment in the lake where she breaks down and her resolve is weak. And he's like, hey, I'll support you no matter what you want to do. You don't want to defeat Sin? If you do, who cares? And they have that moment in the lake that's really romantic. I just think they had such a wonderful, sweet relationship. It's probably one of the few games that I can remember beating and being in tears at the end because I thought it was just so sad. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And was so thankful that I got a sequel. I know a lot of people rag on Final Fantasy X too, but I kind of loved it. And I like the fact that, if you 100% of the game, you got a secret ending where you got to see their relationship resolve in a positive way. And that was really cool.
All right.
Cool.
Well, the next episode.
Yes.
I think I'm going to give you the 2 ideas again and let you pick.
Oh, okay.
So, idea number 1 would be a bit of a hot take episode.
Oh, we like those spicy.
Games that get too much hate.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. So it'll be us defending our own opinions against the majority, which is always fun. On the other side of the coin, this was inspired by a post I saw on Blue Sky of a game that I had never heard before, well, heard of existing, and it led me down a rabbit hole. And the topic is the weirdest licensed games. Not necessarily bad,
but just weird.
Just what the hell were they thinking when they signed that license?
So, in regards to, why would they license this particular property into a game? Why would anybody think this IP would translate to a game?
Yes. What?
Okay.
Yeah. Now, like I said, it could result in something good. I think this one would I don't think this particular game would appear on our list as our top pick for that generation. But a good example would be the Cool Spot game.
Yeah, that was a decent game.
Yeah, it's a fun it's a very well designed platformer. It's very fun. If you don't know that it's a licensed game, you just okay, I'm playing as an anthropomorphic red, period. But it's a license of the red dot that's in the 7-Up logo. On its surface, who's thinking that?
Yeah.
So that's where that topic would go.
I see. Okay. Also, I guess conversely, we could roast we could roast sacred cows too.
Yes.
Instead of being defending games that everybody hates, we could tear down games that everybody seems to love.
Yes, that's the episode that will, if it's possible to get a podcast canceled.
Yeah. Maybe we should combine the two. Do you think we have enough games that get too much hate to last an hour, or do you think we should do both in the same episode? We could do a guilty pleasure and a sacred cow in the same generation for each gen, if we can think of one.
I think as long as we restrict it to one a piece. Yeah,
instead of having a big list. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I like that idea a lot because I think that's going to piss off the maximum amount of people, which we love. We love on the show to start a dialogue. And remember, we're not out here just to hurt your feelings, but we are out here to unapologetically express our feelings.
And our feelings are right.
Yeah. I mean, you can, email us or contact us and let us know why you're wrong or whatever, and that's fine. We'll talk about it on the show. But just know that we're right up front. And there's not really a whole lot you can do about that. So get your own show. I'm just kidding, obviously. But yeah, no, I think that would be cool. Let's defend the games that get too much hate, and let's roast the games that get too much love.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
All right. So next episode, we are looking to ruffle some feathers.
I love doing ruffling feather episodes. This is The thing is, I had already this was one of my first ideas when coming up with ideas was the games that get too much hate one. I never thought of flipping it. And I don't know why, because it's an obvious idea, but
yeah. No, man, a Sacred Cow barbecue. That's like my favorite thing. Even when they're roasting something I love, I just think if you can't laugh at yourself or you can't objectively see what other people might see as flaws in a thing you like, then you need to touch grass. Like a lot of people seem to self-identify with their purchases or the console they get or the games that they like. And you need to understand that it's okay if other people don't like your stuff. In fact, I would argue it's great when other people don't like the games that you like, because if a game you like is unpopular, guess what happens? It goes on sale really fast.
Mm-hmm.
You're saving yourself money. Yep. Stop trying to convince everybody the game is good. Let it get a bad Metacritic score. Go out and play it and enjoy it, and don't worry about what other people think.
Exactly. Use popular or unpopular opinion to your financial advantage.
There you go. All right. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week then. Thank you guys for coming out, as always, to listen to us yammer on about games in list form across the generations, and join us next time for that Sacred Cow roast and that defense of the indefensible. If you need to get a hold of us, of course, check out that link tree in the show notes, and you'll have all the tools that you need to follow, support, like, share, really help boost us in the algorithm, and reach out if you have any opinions or ideas for shows. We are so open to any kind of dialogue.
Absolutely. Until next time, everyone.
Take care.